sexy and I know it. I'm sexy and I know it.
Before I start, I would like to ask you a question. How many of you like to feel happy? By show of hands, please. Great. Let me ask you another question. How many of you would like to have that same feeling every day, knowing that you are taking advantage and living life to the full? Please raise your hand and say aye. Fantastic. Well, if you've been with me on the 10th of March 2002, you would have witnessed something that would have changed the way that you looked at your life forever. We're in a room in Manchester, Wythenshawe. Now, for those of you who live south of Watford, that's in the north. The room is 10 foot by 10 foot. It's very clinical. And in the centre of the room, there's a bed. And on the bed is a young lady. She's very, very slight in stature, very tiny. And she's porcelain white. And with her long, flowing blonde locks, she could easily be mistaken for a Kylie Minogue lookalike. But this isn't Kylie. This is my cousin Lynsey, and she's 27 years old. Now, there's a faint whiff of disinfectant, that clinical smell in the room. And if you'd been with me, you would have realised that you were in a hospital. Now, I don't know about you, I'm sure that like me, you would agree a hospital isn't a place that you would want to spend much of your life. Would you agree, yes or no? Yes. But you see, this isn't the first time that Lynsey's been in hospital. Because when Lynsey was born, she was born with an incurable disease called cystic fibrosis. That's a disease of the lungs, in case you don't know. And when she was 2 years old, her mother was told, Lynsey will never live to be 5. And so when Lynsey first started school at the age of 5, her mother was told she will never be a teenager. And so when Lynsey reached the age of 13, and she started to get these messages from the doctors herself, when they told her that she would never be a mother, she kind of thought that maybe, just maybe, they might be wrong. Now, Lynsey was a fighter. And so at the age of 20, when she was happy to announce that she was indeed pregnant, she knew she'd have a battle in her hands. But we knew that Lynsey would win. Shez, is what she used to call me. Do you hear what those doctors are telling me to do? They've told me to terminate the pregnancy. Not a sniff, she said, and with her big brown eyes as wide as that dismissive gesture, I knew she'd win. This is my one opportunity, she said. My one opportunity to leave something behind when I'm gone. I don't want to have lived on this earth and leave nothing behind when I go, as if I've never existed. But Lynsey, you might go downhill. Huh. I told them, I know I'm not going to live a long life, but I'm certainly going to live a full life. Now, the doctors were right, because it did take a toll on Lynsey's health. And so after 16 weeks, she was already back in the hospital. But the one thing that I loved about my cousin was the fact that she was always full of life. You've heard that saying, when someone has a lust for life, yes? That's exactly what she was like. And I remember visiting her in the hospital, and as I walked through the door into the ward and into her room, she was like that, "Hey, Shez, have you heard? You might have a famous cousin." Granada TV have been in touch. They want to do a documentary, a kind of journal of my life. They want to call it Lynsey's Choices. Hey, Bella and Best have been in touch as well. Oh, I'm going to be in the money. And we were laughing as she said, would you like me to sign your magazine? And so, when Lynsey gave birth by caesarean section at 20 weeks to Jordan John, or JJ as we call him, she was like any other proud parent. I don't know if any of you have any children or you know people who have. The look on their faces is so fantastic, isn't it? You can just see they're beaming with pride. Now Jordan, or JJ, was 2 pounds, 1 ounce when he was born. We called him Tate and Lyle because he was nearly the same size as a bag of sugar. And he went into the premature baby ward, obviously. And we hoped that he would be fine. The great news is he had his mother's fighting spirit. And within 3 months, he was able to leave the hospital and be with his mother. And the even more fantastic news was that he didn't have the cystic fibrosis disease. We knew that he would be able to live a healthy life, and we were thrilled. And so was Lynsey. She was made up. But the doctors had been right again, because Lynsey's body had completely broken down due to the pregnancy. And so she couldn't look after Jordan very well. And when we were told that her only opportunity for life was to have a double lung transplant, we knew she was on borrowed time. It was coupled with the news that because of Lynsey's stature, the donor would have to be a child. For the first time ever, Lynsey was a little bit low. But when the news came that we had found a donor, can you imagine the turmoil of knowing that something could save somebody, but at the same time was obviously causing someone utter pain? It was tough. I remember going to see Lynsey in the hospital again, and she said, Shez, I'm struggling because I know this is my only opportunity to spend some time with Jordan, but I can't even imagine what is going on for those parents. The only thing that I can think is that at least that child didn't die in vain. And so she chose again, and she chose to have the transplant. After a forced period of coma, I heard the great news that Lynsey had woken up. And I remember hearing that her first comments were, do you think you could be quiet? Someone's trying to get some sleep around here. And we knew she was back, not only awake, but it was still the Lynsey that we loved. And so what happened was that when she came out of hospital, within weeks, which is a miracle, she wanted to live life even more to the full. And she did everything with Jordan all the time. She was in Bella and she was in Best, and she was indeed on the television. And yes, she was my famous cousin. She passed her test, she won Bride of the Year, and she married JJ's dad. Big pink Moran dress. Bad taste, but brilliant day. She loved every minute of life, and she had lots of friends and lots of people that would wave to her in the street. She'd been in the paper. They all loved her. But the problem with a lung transplant, unlike other transplants, is that it only buys a little bit of time. And now we're back in the room in Manchester. We've been told this will be the last time we can communicate with Lynsey. I can remember stroking her blonde hair, and she beckoned me to her face. Shez, make sure JJ takes every opportunity. Make sure no regrets. And in minutes, she was gone. So I imagine that you're wanting to know whether or not that had this huge impact on my life, that I changed my life for the better, that I started to live every day, taking a leaf out of my cousin's book. But you see, sometimes life gets in the way, doesn't it? And I went back to the shit. I went back to the miserable people who complained about how life was mistreating them, and I agreed with them. And you know, sometimes when you think you're being a friend to somebody because you're helping them when they're moaning, you're their worst enemy. Because by the end of the conversation, you're both down there. But I blamed everything. I blamed the recession, and I blamed taxes and the government, and anybody and everybody. I'm sure at times I even blamed God. But then one day, if you'd been with me on my way to work, you'd have joined me in my black BMW 5 Series, leather interior, all the tricks, my company car. And as I was driving to work, I was driving to a place of work that I not only hated, despised, but I drove every day for 45 miles in the fear of getting sacked. What's that all about? But if you'd been with me, you would have witnessed the weather was so dark and dismal that day, and it just was indicative of how I felt. You see, something just felt like it was missing. I don't know if you've ever felt that way too. And normally I would play my iPod. I don't know if you agree with me, but sometimes I think that music can lift your spirits. Would you agree, yes or no?
Yes.
Not today. Today, for some strange reason, I turned on the radio. And on the radio, I heard about a lady who was being interviewed by Steve, I think the DJ was, and she was talking about the fact that she looked after terminally ill patients. And I'm ashamed to say, I thought, great, this is all I need today. But her voice was warm and comforting, and I trusted her, and so I listened for a little while longer. And she was talking in her soft voice. Well, you see, Steve, when I'm looking after terminally ill people, it's fantastic. They share their exciting lives, the things that they really love doing. And then they also talk about their regrets. And the number one regret that they have when they're on their deathbed, regardless of whether or not they are men or women, is that they never lived the life that they wanted to live. And I automatically thought, well, Lynsey did. And then, as if a bolt of lightning had completely struck me in my heart, I suddenly had to pull over. You see, yes, Lynsey had taken every opportunity to live her life. But I bloody hadn't. And I started to have those conversations. I don't know if you've ever had those conversations where you kind of have a devil and an angel speaking to you. And my angel was saying, oh, maybe Lynsey sent you this message. Maybe she wants you to do something with your life. Maybe you could help others. Quickly followed by my devil who said, and how the hell are you going to do that? But the answer was I didn't know how I was going to do this. But at that moment in time, I knew something here. I knew here that I had to do something about it. I just didn't know how. Now, I don't know if you agree with me, but sometimes I think that things kind of come your way, and you would look back afterwards and think, that's why that happened. My friend had bought me a ticket for an event called The Power to Achieve. It was with some guy called Andy Harrington. Tall guy, small ideas. Oh, other way around, sorry. And at The Power to Achieve, we went through the process. And in the process, we looked at what we could do instead of what we couldn't do. And we removed chairs. Except in my case, I needed a removal company because mine was a fucking big setting. And at one stage, Andy asked for a volunteer to join him on the stage. Whoa! My hand went up like a 5-year-old that knew an answer to a teacher's question. And I was chosen. And I stood on the stage. I stood right here. That's a lie, actually. I stood right back here because I was shitting myself. And Andy spent a few moments with me, and I knew in those few short moments that this was where I could share a message. And so I joined the Public Speakers University. Hey, if you ever get the opportunity, you should go. And I learned how to share the message, but not just through words. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I can talk. But through feelings and through emotions. We learned how to connect with our audience, that they could feel what we wanted them to hear, not just hear. And then, as we were coming to the end of the Public Speakers University, I was thrilled to be accepted into the academy. Because you see, there's this kind of thing, if you want to be an athlete, you've got to hang around with athletes. Do you agree, yes or no? Yeah. No point going down the pub with your fat mates. So if you really want to be world-class speakers, if you want to be surrounded by people who have the belief that you might not quite have just yet, you know what to do, guys. So, what's happened since I joined the academy? Because at the end of the day, this could just be old chatter, couldn't it? Well, I'm thrilled to tell you that within 2 months of joining the Public Speakers Academy, I gave up my fantastically exciting job of selling knives and forks. This guy doesn't seem impressed. I think he likes knives. And I started to work part-time. And I started to work part-time on my future. I now coach other people. I'm a life ranger, you see. And I've published 2 books. I've just brought out this pocket-sized diary. And this is a journey journal. And this is where not only does the purchaser read the book, but they actually write the book. Because this is the way that they can plan their future, so that they know what they want. And I've had the great pleasure of speaking in many countries. This last year I've been to Dubai and Germany and Spain and Manchester. And I am very happy and grateful to be able to do what I want to do, where I want to do it, when I want to do it, and with whom I want to do it. I want you to write down something. This could be the most important thing you ever hear, because the one question I get asked is, Cheryl, are you always this happy? Or are you on drugs? Usually it's a thing of it. This is the thing that I use when I have my down moments. Because you see, I'm just like you. I am human. And of course I have moments where I think, what do I do? What I want you to write down is, I'd rather have 5 minutes of wonderful than a lifetime of regret. I want you to imagine that maybe you've just got a decision that you're not quite sure what you want to do. Have a look at those words on that piece of paper. In fact, after 3, please say those words back to me. 1, 2, 3. I'd rather have 5 minutes of wonderful than a lifetime of regret. How do you feel? Do you feel a little bit stronger, yes or no? Yes. Brilliant. I hope that you too will choose a life of freedom. I would like to invite back onto the stage my friend, Andy Harrington.
Please, would you shine me Cheryl Chapman, ladies and gentlemen.